People who had sex with someone they didn't know was related to them. How did you find out? And what was the aftermath? We'd been together maybe a month or so when my parents held a big family barbecue that we attended together. Walking down my driveway he said, "Hey, that's my cousin." I responded it better not be, because everyone in sight was related to me. It turned out to be my aunt's sister, but since she was my aunt by marriage we were in the clear. I hope we are, anyway, because we ended up getting married. Since your aunt is related to you by marriage, and not by genetics, there is zero chance of any children having birth defects, or other issues as a result of genetic similarity, incest. That's what we figured, but that first minute or so, until we figured out exactly how closely we were related, was a bit worrying lol. Not me, my brother. One summer, he worked at a garden nursery and bragged about how he was banging a hot MILF who worked with him. Couple of years later at a big family BBQ, he sees his coworker chatting with our mom. Turns out she's our mom's cousin. He was freaked out. I found the whole thing hilarious. She was also not the super hot MILF he was going on about, just an average looking woman in her 40s. No aftermath besides the two of them avoiding each other all day. You don't know what she looked like naked. As Benjamin Franklin would say, all cats are grey in the dark. Worked at Burger King with a girl for 4 years. We got along. Things heated up. She drove me home, but parked in an empty parking lot. Hopped in the back of the SUV. We did this for quite a while. Then at a family reunion my uncle introduced his second wife and well she turned out to be my step cousin. We kept it hush. Is that better? Not me, my mom. She met a guy at some event. Hung out with him a lot and introduced him to the family. I guess nobody caught on to them dating because nobody said anything until they were pregnant and getting ready to get married. Obviously they couldn't get married, they were first cousins that never met as family. They give birth to my half-sister, who was born with a rare nerve muscular disease called Friedreich's ataxia, spelling and link courtesy of Redditor who replied below, who ended up dying from it at the ripe young age of 23 Thanksgiving night about 16 or 17 years ago. Mom flipped and went psycho as my sister died. Gets diagnosed as bipolar about 5 years later. Divorces my dad and moved in with my sister's dad. Lots of drama ensued as it was ugly. Make sure you're not fucking your cousins, folks. The fallout can get horrible. The real lesson is to get antenatal and prenatal screening. Anal would have prevented this. Good point. My wife and I did the ancestry DNA test and it said we are 5th 6th cousins. Yeah, we are all related at some point. 5th 6th cousins isn't even really cousins. That just means your great 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 grandparents were first cousins. Frankly, unless you've moved hundreds of miles away from where you were born, the odds of that aren't that surprising. I'm Mennonite. For generations all we married were our cousins. We are just fine. Obligatory not me. At an old job, a fellow manager came in looking rough and went straight for the fuck this shit tequila we kept stashed in the office. Went to see what was up and found out she walked in on her brother and first cousin banging and learned they'd been doing it for years. To add to it, the cousin invited her to join and the brother seemed super eager for it. She noped out and came to work instead. That's fucked up. Absolutely is. Who passes up an opportunity like that? I had a friend in high school that met this girl from another school through some mutual friends. One thing led to another, and as high school dudes do, he was bragging about having sex with a hot girl in the hallway. Around the same time as he was having sex with this girl, his grandmother died. He goes to the funeral home, and this girl was there. Come to find out, his grandmother and her grandfather were estranged brother and sister, so my friend never knew that side of the family existed. That'd make them second cousins, if I'm not mistaken. He told a couple of us this story right before graduation and we couldn't believe it. He said that they made eye contact at the funeral home, which was unbelievably awkward as you can imagine. They then got introduced to one another. They acted like they had just met. They left that night and never spoke again. Funerals are weird. I went to my grandma's funeral and discovered that I worked with 3 of my dad's cousins. No weird sex stuff, fortunately. I've never been so glad to have an off-topic response as I'm in this thread. I hooked up with a girl at 19. She was a waitress at my work and was attending college at my school. She was the hottest girl I knew and was wild. Her dad got a job 3 as a dishwasher. One day my parents came in with my brother, the owner of the restaurant. Dad comes and says, "I had no idea you and your brother work and shit as boys were cousins. That makes you and girl's name second cousins. We hooked up one last time and never spoke of it again." How do you create a throwaway? I have a sorta a different experience. After my mom married my stepdad, my step cousin and I became great friends. My mom got a divorce, so she isn't technically related by blood or marriage, but there was a lot of tension when we got walked in on by her sister. I went to a softball game in my high school days and met a girl. She played well and we hit it off. I would drive 20 miles to see her and we dated for 3 months. Around then I found out she lived a lot closer. We both thought the other lived in the area we met. I went to pick her up and found out she was a first cousin. How didn't I know? Between both parents I have upwards of 40 cousins and some I never met. Now at all reunions or wedding my sister asks hoping Stacy shows up again. I hear your auntie has it going on. Me and my girlfriend found out we are probably semi-closely related as we both have distant family with the same last name from the same area. We haven't done an ancestry DNA test yet, but we are dreading the outcome. 1. Love wins. 2. We're all related somehow, as long as you're not like first or second cousins or brother/sister stuff and etc. There's not much to worry about genetically. You should both be plenty different by now. It's just a funny fact you two can laugh about. 3. Makes picking who gets to keep their last name a little easier, since it could be both of yours already anyways. Second cousins are pretty safe, unless you are part of a very specific and small ethnic group, in which case there's risk of more connections higher up the family tree. I knew a couple who were trying for a baby, but unfortunately each one kept passing away from hydrops. After the third, they had genetic testing, and both carried a rare thalassemia trait that is common in their ethnic background. The next baby had a 1/4 chance of hydrops and increased risk of other problems. They turned out to be cousins, and the marriage fell apart because the mother wasn't willing to endure the trauma of further pregnancies. So the marriage would have been fine if she would have just continued having miscarriages? I highly doubt it. The main reason for the split was due to differences on family planning, but divorces are rarely because of one thing. Not me, but a former classmate. He had sex with his cousin. When he found out it was his cousin, he started to brag about it. Weird flex, but okay. We had a good chuckle about it and then had sex again. Roll Tide. Unintentional Alabama turns into intentional Alabama. Had a one-night stand with a girl after she asked my last name for curiosity. She was shocked. It happens to be her mom's maiden last name, with a very unusual spelling. Never seen or heard anyone with the same last name. We chatted and her mom was also born in the same small town as my dad. Also born about the same time as my dad. My dad was a bastard child, but his mom, my grandmother, gave him, my dad, his birth dad last name. We concluded that any more talk could get creepy, and fucked very furiously 2 more times before she left, never to be heard from again. In the 60s, I made love to many women. Often outdoors. In the mud and the rain. And it's possible a man slipped in. There would be no way of knowing. A hole is a hole, and a roll is a roll. Not me personally, but I know a few people that have done this. Sometimes the aftermath was muted and easily handled, even when it was a reasonably close relative. Sometimes it was off the charts, even though they were very distant cousins. I guess it's all relative. I see what you did there. My mom knew a guy who ended up having sex with his mom, who he had never met until that day. I'm pretty sure he killed himself not long after. Oedipus, is that you? My mom had an affair while she was married to my dad the milkman, and the guy she was having an affair with was the farmer. So at age 13 my mom told me I was actually the farmer's kid, but because I was born in her marriage with the milkman I was supposedly related to all these people. Well, my first love, my first kiss was with my now fiance, before we knew we weren't related. We are legally fourth cousins but biologically, had a DNA test done, we aren't related at all. His parents made us break up, and when I told him I had DNA test done they finally said we could be together. We are now due to have a baby in August and get married sometime next year. Alabama has entered the chat.